All right, so for your second day, we're going to be looking at conditioning, and we're going to be starting to work on what are called Tabata sets. The purpose of doing this is so that we can actually develop more endurance so that you can actually push more when you're doing your strength training and hypertrophy training. It's also going to be just better for your heart. It's going to help you with leaning out and losing some of that fat. Yes, I know. And so what we're going to be doing, we're starting off with a 60-30 set, and we're going to be dropping down to a 45 or 40-20 set, and then eventually a 30-15. And so generally you want your rest period to be roughly half of whatever your work period is, and there's really not much more benefit for going longer than a minute. So we're not going to be doing like a 90-45 or something like that. So the exercises that we have in here are going to be mostly full body and compound movements in general. So the first one is just going to be a drop lunge, and we're just going to alternate sides. Our pace on this is going to be working up to being as fast as possible. However, getting through all the sets without getting dizzy or nauseous or having any of those complications come up is going to be of the utmost importance. So first is going to be a drop lunge. When I get down into the drop lunge, I like to tell people to actually lightly touch the back of their knee when they're first starting to do lunges to make sure that that knee is bent. A lot of times people will do this kind of thing where they're not really bending their back leg, and it kind of and stops their movement from actually happening. So I really want to be focusing on coming down, and I can feel my skin touching the ground with that back knee, but I'm not putting any weight on it. So I shouldn't hear a thud on the ground. I'm not pausing here with weight on my knee. I want to actually stay in motion as much as possible as I'm going down into these drop lunges, okay? And you see that my torso is staying above my hips, right? So I'm not doing one of these types of things where I'm kind of bending forward, but I'm also not arching my back. So that's going to be your drop lunges. If you want to progress that, you can start to hold weights if you wanted to, right? Notice also my front knee is staying over my heel. Sometimes I have bad reps where it kind of comes a little bit forward. As long as I'm keeping my weight in the back of my foot, it's fine. But usually that's going to happen between above the heel to mid-foot, right? But I don't want to start coming over my toes as I'm dropping back into those lunges. Further progressions is that you can start to move into a plyometric, which I don't really feel like we're necessarily ready for, and it's going to burn you out a lot faster. But if you want to try it, you can go and get that switch in the air. Now, when it comes to doing the kettlebell swing, and with my plantar fasciitis, this has been actually rather difficult for me to do lately. The only kettlebell I have here, besides my adjustable one, is 15 pounds. I generally start people about 22.5 pounds to 25 pounds. And this is the reason why I'm not wearing a shirt right now, is I want you to pay attention to what's going on in my back. So, this is my anatomical position, right? So, if I push my belly button in, I've got a natural inner curve to my low back. That's fine. Really, when it comes to doing a deadlift of any kind, this much motion is enough to throw out your back. So it's really important that we actually either keep the back in this neutral curve or a little bit tighter than that, right? So when I start a deadlift, which a kettlebell swing is always a deadlift, it's never a squat. My knees don't track forward. When my knees don't track forward, it actually puts all the tension and whatnot into my hamstrings and my glutes. If they track forward, it becomes more of a quad thing, and I'm going to do more of a squat for it. So what I want, ideally, is I want to get into this position. So my shoulders are rolled back and tight. My back is flat or slightly arched. So think about initiating the movement by lifting my tailbone slightly, right? I'm going just a little bit to kind of really engage that back chain, pushing my hips back. Oftentimes I'll actually start with people with their a wall behind their butt, and have them try to touch the wall on each movement before I even give them a weight. So I push back, I find that stretch in the back of my legs, and then I squeeze my glutes. So think about either you have a walnut back there that you're trying to crack on each rep, or you have a check for $1 million, right? And when you get back here, you touch the wall, you can feel somebody's trying to pull that check out of your ass crack, and you want to hold on to that check. So you grab it with your ass cheeks. And when you get into this finishing position at the top of the movement, your hips will naturally kind of come forward a little bit. So if I squeeze my glutes just from standing, and you can do this yourself, right? If I squeeze my glutes, oftentimes my hips will project forward a little bit. I go into what's called posterior pelvic tilt, right? So, boom, getting there. That's the end of your movement, not this, right? And a lot of times when people do a kettlebell swing, they pull and they overarch their back, right? And they just let their hips fly forward. That's not what I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to do is I'm squeezing my butt so tight that I get into this standing position and it tucks under, but I'm not trying to let my back overarch at the top, and I'm not just trying to sit into my hips. I'm just cracking that walnut, and that's what's going to give me the force. You know, a lot of times when I teach a kettlebell swing, people will tend to not be able to get the kettlebell to move. I don't care how far the kettlebell goes, right? I would advise that you don't care about it too much. So I push back and I try to get what's going on in my hips down, and the kettlebell, when I get that explosiveness going, will automatically come up to the right position. So really focus on what's happening in your low back, because if your low back goes out, you're fucked. And focus on what your hips are doing to get that kettlebell up. Again, I usually start people off at about 22.5 to 25 pounds for the starting kettlebells. I don't necessarily think there's a whole lot of benefit for going much heavier than that. I'm going to move the camera and then we'll go ahead and talk about the third one.